Well, hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Johnny and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling, and this is going to be part 5 of our M60A3 with the M9 Bulldozer attachment by TACOM. And let's see, we're going to be doing some painting. Time to get down to that paint, and we've got a lot going on there. So let's just go ahead, jump on down and get that started. All right, so first thing, we'll take a look at our instructions here and pick out which one that we're going to paint up. And I think I'm going to do this one right here with the 09 on it there with the orange background. That looks pretty good to my eye, and I like the camouflage pattern, so we're going to kind of do that. But there is a little problem here on the bustle rack where that decal goes. There should be a placard there, which is not in the kit. So as you can see here on the back of the turret, there is no placard. There's no part contained in the kit for that, and that's really where that number needs to be. So we'll address that by making a plate for our little zero, or yeah, the 09 to go on to. So we're going to measure that out first, and it comes out to be about 10 millimeter by 11. So we need something thin that's going to be in scale. Luckily for us, TACOM has a lot of this leftover fret here in brass, and it's really thin, which is ideal for what we need to do. So I'm just going to find me a section here where I can actually cut something out. So I'm just going to use my steel ruler here and a metal scribe, kind of make a little line there for me to cut, start cutting anyway, a section off for us to make our placard plate out of. So this is one of the reasons why we don't throw anything away. And this is thin enough brass that we can just use a good set of shears, or a decent set, or something that works without actually bending this up too much. Because as you cut this, it's going to try to curl a little bit, so we'll just take and snip that off. And we're going to go ahead and mark out the total size for it, and we'll cut it to the correct size here. Hopefully I can get it as a rectangle there, because it's 10 by 11 millimeters. So as you can see, the corners did bend up just a little bit, so we need to kind of flex those back in, give us a nice little flat surface area. And I'm going to deburr it as well. I'm just going to use my little flat file here to clean up those edges. We don't want anything sharp there. Now we do want to go in and check to make sure that the size is correct, and it is, and I haven't made too many mistakes here, so that ought to be fine. And then we'll just, after we paint everything, we'll attach that with a little bit of CA glue to put our decal on, and that ought to look pretty good. So moving on, I'm going to have to take everything apart here for painting. It's not a bad idea to wipe everything down also with a little bit of rubbing alcohol or a cleaner of your choice, because we have been handling these parts quite a bit. Now when it comes to our photo etch, I'm going to go ahead and prime it with this Mr. Primer here, Mr. Metal Primer. And it dries really, really thin. You do need to give it plenty of time to set off completely, or it might kind of skin off, which is not something that we really want it to do. But we're going to give all of our metal parts here a coat of this Mr. Metal Primer, if I can say that correctly there. We don't want to forget any of these parts. Give the paint the best opportunity possible to stick. And then, of course, a good, successful painting session goes with all your preparation. Using metal clips, and also I'm using tapered dowels, which works really well for our road wheels. And in this particular case, I do need to use a little pencil sharpener there. Clean up some of that old paint and everything there, so we got a good positive lock where the axle shaft would go for it. And then for other parts, we can just use this tape on a back of a piece of cardboard there, sticky side rolled out, and that'll hold our parts. So for priming, and you don't necessarily have to prime, but I like to prime. So we're going to use this Vallejo Black water-based acrylic, mixed, of course, for the airbrush. And we'll use that to spray everything. And it'll give us a chance to also take a look once everything is unified and see if there's anything that we need to pay attention to. So whenever you're painting water-based acrylics over polystyrene parts, which is the plastic that this model is made out of, it is good to kind of get you a light coat on there first, and then you can come back in and kind of fill in any thin spots that you have there. We just want a really good coverage because there are a lot of little nooks and crannies and crevices from all these detailed parts here, and if we miss something in our color painting, at least it will be kind of a shadow. So when it comes to the blade, I think we're going to do a little bit of hairspray chipping. Instead of using chipping fluid, I'm going to use hairspray for that. But we need a base metal color there, so we need to spray that area so that when we chip the paint away, we got some nice silver to show. And I'm going to be using this craft paint here, and this is the metallic craft paint water-based silver, and I've mixed that up so that it'll work well in my airbrush. So next up, we will paint that entire area there where we're going to be doing some chipping. So we're going to have to take several light passes here to get this silver to lay down onto our black Vallejo primer coat there. We don't want it to build up and cause any drips or runs or anything, because these acrylic metallic paints can kind of give you an uneven surface if you do allow it to build up. So that looks pretty good. So with that dry, we are now ready to go ahead and apply the hairspray to it. Now we're going to be chipping also on that bottom edge because it'll be making contact with the ground, so we're going to want to do that. So this is what I'm using for my hairspray chipping. This is Tresemme, whatever it is, number 3 there. So first of all, I decant it down into a little container here, which we'll just pour straight into the airbrush and get that sprayed. Now, for the colors that I use on this model, you don't have to do what I'm doing. You can use the recommended ammo style paints here, and they give the numbers and everything and the colors for it. I do like to use the craft paints, as I think you guys know already, but you don't have to do what I do. So these are the acrylics that I'm going to be using. We've got the olive, which we'll be using for our green, and the warm brown here as well. And then we're going to be using this latte for our sand color, and of course for the black we'll be using the primer black that we've already have mixed up here. That'll suffice for our little black accents that we're going to put in. Now when it comes to the craft paints, they're really easy to use, or at least I think they're easy to use, and they're very durable too. We put some of the paint into a mixing jar, and then we're going to add a little bit of thinner. Now that's the Vallejo acrylic thinner that I use, and then we'll give it a good mix. I don't want this video to be all about mixing paint, but I think it's worth mentioning. You kind of want to get it to a fair consistency here, and it kind of depends upon what size nozzle you're using on your airbrush and what pressure that you're kind of running your airbrush at. But here in a second we'll see it's supposed to be kind of the consistency of milk. So as you can see there, that's about right. Might be just a little bit thin, but I think that it's real good. That should give us a really good spray. So using our painting schematic as a guide, we're just going to go in and start outlining the green areas here, and I'm using that olive green for that. And we'll just keep moving around the model and making sure that I'm trying to stay as much to the scheme as possible. And then if it gets a little busy looking, you can just start filling them in. That way we don't accidentally forget where our pattern is. So it fills in really easy. Next up, we need to put our turret on and put it in its travel position. And for me, it's going to be the forward there. That way we can start doing our matchup between the pattern from the hull itself to the turret. And so we're just going to go around and mark where the green starts all along the bottom of the turret. And that way we can go ahead and carry on with that pattern after we figure out exactly where it's supposed to go. So I think it's going to really look much better than if it's kind of mismatched on display with our turret forward. So we want to make sure that that kind of matches up. So next up, we need just to fill in these large areas with our brown. And we're sticking with the pattern as much as we possibly can. Just want to make sure that we're covering up as much of the black as possible. Now you probably noticed that I didn't do any pre-shading, and that's because of the different color saturations here. It probably would not even show through anyway by the time we get everything touched up and retouched later on. So I didn't really think that that would be beneficial, so we are just going to go ahead and paint over it. Now, do remember that the color of your primer can affect the total opacity or look, or the how dark this paint is going to appear on your model. Now, we don't want to forget, of course, our drive sprockets and our road wheels. And I am painting some of these road wheels the brown, the warm brown, to match our pattern. So you don't want to forget about those little things and the other stuff like our blade and what have you. So here are our two colors. These are the two primary colors that covers most of the vehicle. And so we have our green and brown on there. Now I did darken up that green a little bit and went back and sprayed over it because that olive was a little bit too bright. And I think it looks much better now with just a drop of black in it there. So with our pattern matched up, that's good. It looks really good. It's a continuous kind of swooping pattern there. And we do want to check and make sure that it also matches with our commander's cupola as well. So if there's anything that we need to fix that is majorly wrong with our pattern, well, now would be the time to do it before we start doing the other two accent colors. And speaking of accent colors, next up is our latte or our sand color that we're going to be using. It's really important that you get your mixture and your air pressure correct here. That way you'll have very minimal overspray. Now, my airbrushing abilities are still in development. So I expect some overspray that I need to touch up, and we can always go back in with the green and the brown and get some areas that may have gotten too much overspray. Now I am going for a soft pattern. That's where the edges of these multiple colors are kind of a little fuzzy, you know. They're not real sharp. They're not lines. So that is true on the actual vehicle itself, regardless of what the schematic looks like. I know from personal experience that they are really not real sharp edges. And then coming in with the Vallejo Black, which we already had mixed up from priming the vehicle. No sense in letting good paint go to waste. And after all, I mean, it's just flat black. And we'll start doing our black accents. Now, as you can see, they don't really taper very well, so we'll come back in and try to rein in that large overspray area there a little bit. But we'll just keep following the TACOM painting schematic to get all this black placed in the correct places. And of course, we don't want to forget about our blade for our dozer. That black is a little bit wide, and you can see I'm starting to come in and kind of try to close it up a little bit there and take care of that. For some reason, I just could not get everything correct. So I'm coming back in with our two primary colors, the brown and the green, and kind of closing in the edges on that black, because it is a rather large, and I don't want it. I would like for it to be much smaller, but at this point my airbrush abilities and knowledge on how to use it are a little bit limited. So that's my solution to kind of fixing that. So once again, we're going to do another pattern check here, and just go ahead and put our turret on. And what we're looking for is anything that is really stands out to us as, yeah, that's just wrong. So we'll put the turret on and the commander's cupola as well, and check our pattern to see if it matches up and if it looks right. And if it looks right, then it's right. I mean, it's a model and it's your model, so it'll be fine. But I think our color selections look pretty good. And maybe everything's not exactly in the same place that it is in the schematic, but I think it's a real good representation of the real thing. You guys will let me know in the comments what you think about that. So next up, it's time to do our chipping. So I do have a brush for applying water and also doing some chipping there at a little chisel point. And then I have a thick stenciling brush too to help if it is stubborn. And if all else fails, we have a toothbrush to kind of help us out there. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put a little water on the surface here. So the theory is, and I've done this chipping before, but you can see that a little bit of paint peels off immediately there. So I need to go light on my water because I may have my hairspray a little bit too thick there. So I'm going to come back in with the brush there and start pulling the paint from that cutting edge on the bottom of our bulldozer blade. Now that edge is not going to have any paint really left on it except in some very remote spots. So if it all comes off down there, it's not a disaster, because as you are pushing this blade through the soil and dirt and rocks and everything, it's going to be worn away. So we'll just keep moving up with it and pulling this paint off, and it sticks pretty good in some places, and that's okay. I just need to work with it a little bit. But we do need to pay attention as we get higher up on the blade, how that paint's coming off. And there's a couple of factors there. Either if you put too much hairspray or chipping fluid on there, it can come off in sheets, which we've seen. Or if it's not enough, it'll stick really bad. So far, we've got it moving pretty good, and that's not a problem for us. So I want to be gentle as I move up, because the other factor is how thick the paint is. And if your paint is thick, it may want to come off in sheets rather than to come off in small chips. So I've switched my brush to the paint stenciling brush here. It's got real thick hairs on it. And that way I can control the edges a little bit easier. uh, if control is what you would call what I'm doing right now. But yeah, we've got it moving along. Now, on that bottom edge there, the trailing edge is probably not going to have hardly any paint left on it at all, but up where it is real close, not only to the bottom of the cutting edge itself, which is where we need to remove all that paint, down to the silver, but up around those little bolt holes that are there, there's going to be paint remaining there because it's kind of protected by that cutting edge. So we really want to kind of simulate that. Now, I intend to display this model with the blade in its up locked position, so I don't want to remove all the paint all the way up in there. See, we'll be leaving just a little bit in there. Once that's done, we'll go back and kind of work on the face a little bit. Now, you can remove as much as you like or as little as you like. I am still using the stiff bristle brush here to kind of give it more of a chipping look. So I'm kind of stabbing at it a little bit there. I know it looks like I'm being really rough with it, and maybe I am. But we can also come in with a, I'm using a toothpick here, or cocktail stick if you prefer. Although we hillbillies, we don't have very many cocktails. But you can use that for fine scratches and adding extra detail there. And of course, you know, items will be pushed up high on the blade from time to time. So that's kind of what we got going on there. I think that looks pretty good. And I'm not worried about the residue that's on the bottom of the blade edge there. It makes it look dirty. That's kind of the look we're going for there. I just want to make sure that there's not any great big chips of paint left stuck to it. But that's a pretty good effect. I think it looks all right. And I've been wanting to try this effect on a bulldozer blade for a while, so I'm kind of pleased with the way it looks. You guys let me know in the comments if you think it looks all right. But I think that kind of captures the essence of what that should be. So next up, we need to pay attention to these canvas mantlet covers. And in reality, they were kind of a plastic coated canvas type material, but I do need to mask it off. We need to protect all of that hard work that we did on the painting of the vehicle with its camouflage scheme. So we're going to be very careful. We have a very narrow strip where this Tamiya masking tape can actually get a hold of it there. And we need a really good straight line there, which is going to be a big noticeable difference between that mantlet cover and then the armor. Also, we will add some extra tape and stuff to protect from overspray. Now, when it comes to the cover that's on our 50 cal on our Commander's cupola, I'm going to have to do that by hand because this cover here for the Commander's sight, it extends really far over top of that canvas. So I'll have to paint that by hand, and then we can touch up whatever little mistakes I make with our leftover paint from spraying the primary colors there. So when it comes to those canvas parts, I'm going to be using this Parched Grass by Vallejo, which is a water-based acrylic. I call it my OD Green, World War II style. But it's going to give us a really good different green shade there for that canvas cover. And of course I've got it mixed up for the airbrush. Now here we are after the spraying, and I removed the extra overspray protection. But you can see it's still kind of wet on the bottom there. We'll let that dry. Now when it comes to the Commander's cupola, of course I'm going to brush this on. Using a real fine brush, and I don't want to paint the very edge of it, which is a metal strip that holds this down into place. Now it's going to come out a little bit thin because I'm brushing on the same mixture that I use in the airbrush, so I'll probably need 2 coats for that. So I do wait for that first coat to dry, and then we're going to come back in and put that second coat on there. As you can see, we got some of that black and overspray from us painting the rest of the vehicle, kind of showing through. And we're going to clean all that up with a second coat. And then if there's anything that we need to attend to where my brush painting is not so great, we can touch that up with the camouflage colors. Now here we have our water cans, which I intend to put on the bustle rack. And we have sprayed the armor color onto the mounts, but when it comes to the water cans themselves, in the 1980s they were black. So we're going to go back in with the Vallejo black mixture that we used for our primer coat and just reinstate that black there. So those look pretty good. So next up, I'm going to use the olive green and the black here to mix us up a dark green for our fuel cans. Now, if you've seen the real deal, and that's about the color we need right there. It's a really, really dark green that the fuel cans were actually painted back in the 1980s. So that's the color I'm going to use on mine. And of course, you know, we're just going to go in and be very careful. I don't want to get any paint on our bracket there. And we'll just go ahead and paint our fuel cans this really dark green. And that should give us plenty of contrast there for the model overall. And of course, when you're painting these things, it tends to be rather subjective. But I think these dark green cans is going to really look good. Make it really period correct. Now when it comes to our straps, I'm going to go back to the OD green that we used for our mantlet cover and our 50 cal elevation mechanism cover. And we're going to use that same color here for these straps that secure our cans to the actual brackets where they sit. And that'll give us a little bit more color differential there, so it doesn't blend in with the green that we have on the armor. So next we have these vision blocks for our commander's cupola, and I really wish these had been the clear parts that we could have inserted. That would have been really nice, but since it's not, we're just going to have to paint these up. And I'm just being very careful here, and I'm just using the Vallejo black to fill these in. Now, you don't have to really worry too much about getting real close to the edges. We can always use black panel liner to kind of fill that edge in nice and smooth for us, which in the end is going to give us a really nice clean edge there. And I guess that's about all we have time for right now. We've got quite a bit done. It gets a little complicated when you're doing these multiple color schematic or schemes, painting schemes. But as you can see here, we've got our sand and our black on with our green and our brown as well. We did have to darken up that green because the olive was just a little bit too bright for my taste, but a couple of drops of black and we went back and went over that, and really easy to fix, And also we got our mantlet cover painted up, so it'll be ready for some weathering and all of that, so that we're in good shape there. As well as our commander's cupola, got all those little pesky vision ports all taken care of there. It would have been nice if those had been clear parts, but since they're not, we'll have to paint those up. But that's okay. We'll put some of that, to me, a clear, probably the gray or something like that on there to give it a little bit of sheen there. And, of course, we got these wonderful fuel cans and our water cans done. Oh, Yeah, as long as I don't lose it. There we go. Water can's done. So, back in the 1980s, the fuel cans were usually a really dark green, which is what I hope that I managed to get done here. And the water jugs, 5-gallon water cans, those were usually black. That sand and other colors green didn't come into play until around the Desert Storm time in the 1990s. So, special thanks to all of my subscribers because of you guys that I keep making these videos, and I hope that you enjoyed this one. And if you did, don't forget to give a like. And if you're new to the channel and not a subscriber, I hope today I earned a subscription. And don't forget to leave me a comment. I love to hear from you guys, and I read every single thing that you guys write, and I try to respond to everything. So if I miss anybody, I apologize for that. Until next time, guys, stay safe.